Frank Olson was a 39-year-old biochemist who had spent the early Cold War mapping the edges of biological warfare for the U.S. Army and later a covert branch of the CIA. He worked at Fort Detrick and with the agency's technical services staff, a man trusted inside projects the public would never see. He believed he was defending his country. What he didn't know was that the country's secret war on mines would soon turn his life into a riddle pressed under official silence. In November 1953, amid fevered American fears of Soviet breakthroughs in mind control, the CIA's MKUltra programs escalated. Led by Sidney Gottlieb, the agency funneled funds into experiments testing LSD and other drugs on unwitting subjects. The logic inside those walls was brutal in its simplicity. If psychochemical tools worked on enemy interrogations or could extract confessions, the advantage would be decisive. On November 18, Olson was invited to a weekend retreat with CIA colleagues in rural Maryland, ostensibly to unwind and discuss work. During the gathering, he was secretly dosed with LSD. The agency's own records later showed the experiment was meant to observe behavioral effects. Olson's reactions were deep and disorienting. Colleagues described his mood as agitated, terrified even. 9 days later, on November 28, Olson checked into the Hotel Statler in New York with a CIA colleague, Robert Lashbrook. In the early hours, he fell from a 10th-floor window and died. For decades, the official line was concise: suicide. But pieces of the story did not fit. Olson had been a devout family man with no overt history of depression. The timing, days after a covert dosing with a powerful hallucinogen, set off alarm bells. In 1975, when congressional investigations exposed MKUltra's existence, the Olson family learned the truth. The CIA had administered LSD to Frank without his consent. That revelation changed the death from a private tragedy into a public scandal. The 1970s inquiries, the Rockefeller Commission, the Church Committee, forced the U.S. intelligence community to acknowledge a pattern of secret experimentation. The government offered the Olson family a settlement and a form of apology. That, however, did not close the book. In 1994, driven by persistent doubt and a son's relentless pursuit of answers, Olson's body was exhumed. Forensic pathologists found a previously undetected fracture on the back of his skull, inconsistent with a simple fall. The autopsy raised the real possibility of homicide. Yet the CIA maintained it had never intended to kill him. It confirmed, reluctantly, that agents had dosed him with LSD, but denied a role in his death. Key witnesses painted different pictures. Lashbrook, who had been in the room with Olson the night he died, said later that Olson had been distraught, while other accounts suggested a more violent end. What emerged from the Olson case was not a neat courtroom drama, but a tangle of motive, secrecy, and institutional self-preservation. MKUltra itself had been ordered largely off the books. In 1973, many records were destroyed on direct orders from CIA leadership. That destruction left gaps that made definitive conclusions nearly impossible. Still, the documents that survived, spreadsheets of covert funding, memos describing behavioral modification experiments, and internal notes discussing drugging unwitting U.S. citizens, confirmed a pattern of ethical breaches at the highest levels. Frank Olson's death became a symbol, a single life crushed between Cold War paranoia and a secretive bureaucracy willing to violate its own citizens in the name of national security. The case forced reforms, stricter oversight of the intelligence community, and public scrutiny of human subject research. Yet it also left a lingering question the records cannot fully answer. Did the men who dosed Frank Olson ever intend to kill him, or did a series of reckless choices and cover-ups create the conditions for a preventable death? The conspiracy survives not only in unanswered forensic questions, but in the cultural aftershock, a nation forced to reckon with the moral cost of clandestine warfare. The Olson story remains a cautionary documentary truth. When secrecy becomes routine and oversight evaporates, ordinary lives can vanish in the classified files, and history must work decades to pry the lid open.